the first one we're going with is Skip's Predator, Skip Morris. To me, this is one of his most famous flies. And although, like I said, he said that this was invented as a trout fly to be fished subsurface, it's definitely an excellent bluegill fly for the time of year. And I nicked my thread, but I think I can. There I go. I think I survived. Now, like I said, I'm going to use that. It's a pearl braid. I got it at a craft store, but you could use crystal flash, pearl crystal flash. But if I use 2 thicknesses of this stuff, that seems to be a perfect tail for this. So when Skip does this tail, he actually goes down the bend a little ways, just a little ways. So it kind of points down a little bit and out of the way. The back of your, the actual back of the hook shank is probably right about in there. But then that tail is pretty short. And I'll take the point of my scissors and just kind of tease that out. So that braid is kind of teased out a little bit. There it goes. So that'd be about maybe 4 or 5 strands of crystal flash doubled over. So then I'm going to come up to about the middle of the hook shank, right about in there. And I took a strip of foam, and usually when I do these, I go right at about the diameter, the width of the gap of the hook, a little bit more sometimes, like that. And then start tying that down. You notice I kind of tilted it towards myself because the thread torque's going to take that foam around, and that'll keep it on the top. I just kind of pinch it. Maybe another, about right in there. So that'll be the end of the fly. Now, the way he does the rubber legs sticking out of the back of the fly, I started the recording a little bit late, so let me grab that Predator again if I can find it. Here it is. So the legs that stick out of the back of the fly, those are actually protruding through the foam. And he actually uses like a large sewing needle and sticks the rubber legs through there. What I started doing is using a bobbin threader. You want this to be fairly low. On this one that I'm using for kind of a road map, those are a little bit high sticking up. It'd be nicer if those were a little bit lower in the foam. So I'm just going to stick this bobbin threader through a little bit at an angle. That'll go through that foam. Then I'm going to grab that thinner round rubber leg material and stick it through there. And then just pull that through the foam. I don't like the end of that. I'm going to cut this. The end of this, the end of this strand is kind of a wide. I want a little bit more of the banding in there. So I'm going to cut it like that. That's just me being picky. So when that gets folded forward, that's still going to stick up a little bit, but not too bad. So then I need to come through from the other side. So I'm going to try to come in at an angle about in the same place. The fish isn't going to care. And then I want to take that strand, which has wrapped around my thread a little bit. There we go. Stick that through the threader and pull it back through. Now you don't want to just pull this all the way, because one thing about these kind of flies with rubber legs is the fish will pull those legs off a lot of times. So also what Skip does is actually ties that stuff down, leaves a little bit of a loop to tie it down like that. Okay, and then I can cut that other tail at about the same length. So when I put the dubbing down, then that'll take care of the body. So for the body, I said dubbing, but actually for this one, I'm going to use the black and coffee colored variegated chenille. And I'm going to tease a little bit of the chenille away from there to expose the core and tie it down by that core. Then I'm going to advance my thread to the midpoint, right about there. This is a size 6 hook. That's about the size I like to use for bass and for bigger bluegills. And you want to make sure it has a pretty decent gap on it, because you've got a little bit of bulk here. You've got the foam. And if you're using too small of a gap of a hook, then that stuff's all going to get in the way and you're going to have trouble. So right there at about the midpoint of the hook, I'm going to leave a little bit of slack in there, not much. Pinch that foam and wrap around. Now this thread I'm using is actually 3/0. When you're working with foam and you're really pulling on it and it's the tension of the foam is pulling against it, you can use a smaller thread, but you'll end up breaking your thread. And another thing is you'll end up cutting the foam. So it's better to use a thicker thread if you can, and also try to If you see, I'm kind of making a wide band there in between the foam sections. And it's just so it doesn't cut through that foam. So there's the bottom. And then you want to bring this toward the front. Almost to the eye. And then do the same thing, just pinch that foam, wrap around there, and then just come back on it. Get that centered. And make a little space there. Now, Skip doesn't fill this in at all with dubbing or anything. And for the eyes, I like to use what I have left of the proper size. These were actually, I think, Wapsi produced them. They're a dumbbell eyes, I think is what they're called. You can make the suitable substitute with monofilament by melting the monofilament on the ends. I'll show you that in a second. We do this like with any eyes, just kind of do some crisscross wraps like that. Now, the thing with these plastic dumbbell eyes is you can break that stem. So you don't want to torque on it too much. I've done that enough times. And then I like to use a little bit of dubbing in this point, like I said, for this section of the fly. When Skip Morris ties it, he just leaves thread, and then make sure to use head cement to cover up those thread wraps. For that, maybe I'll use kind of a darker brown here. And this is a SLF. It's got some real spiky squirrel hairs in it. I just like the looks of it on this kind of fly. And just cover that section maybe a little bit more to get around the eyes. Stretch it out. All right, now I want to go back to this, back to where the body, I guess it'd be the abdomen where that ends. And then fold this over. Pinch it. And the best way to do this is some just kind of medium tension wraps and then get tighter as you go. And that's where it ends up. And then if you take your scissors and just kind of do he just rounds this off like that. And then for the legs, I've got a strand again from this Bass. They sell them at Bass Pro Shops for spinner baits. But that's the cheapest way to get really nice looking rubber legs for any kind of flies. But this is enough to do both sides So I'm going to take one strand, and in the back section here, I'll make a couple of wraps and then make sure that's where I want it to be on the side there. And I'll cut that off. Go to the other side. Make a couple more wraps and then get that situated. That looks about right. And then again, with rubber legs, you're going to have them pulled out, especially with bluegills. But the more you wrap, the more it's going to pull those legs together. You want them to kind of splay out if you can. So a few more wraps and then come right behind the head there. And that's where you can do the whip finish. There's 3. Go ahead and cut that loose. And then you can use head cement. You can use UV resin. I'll use a little bit of this UV resin. And hit it with the light. And that should last through millions of bluegill. Maybe not millions. That's Skip's Predator.
Nice looking fly.
Any questions on that one?
Looks very nice.
Yeah, it does.
We got Al and Gretchen in the waiting room. Hal, are you there? Can you hear me, Al?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How's sunny California?
Yeah, I am. Just joining in for a moment and stay as long as I can. I was in a little bit ago and had to duck out.
We just finished. Let's see where I put it. We just finished a Skip's Predator from Skip Morris.
Looks good.
And the next one, actually before Skip's Predator was the Gurgler from Jack Gartside. I found a quote where he said, first off, the Gurgler, by virtue of its upturned and extended lip, is designed primarily to be a surface commotion fly. That is, it attracts fish to the commotion or noise it makes while moving across the surface. Once it's done with this job of attracting the fish, the form of the fly then assumes greater importance, the form of a bait fish, frog, worm, grasshopper, or whatever, and convinces the fish that this is worth eating. And then the fun begins for you, not for the fish, which presumably is more than a bit disappointed by the mistake it's made. So the Gurgler is a lot similar, and I tell you, like I said earlier, you can find hundreds of different variations of the gurgler, and very similar to the Predator. This one is. A lot of the gurglers have just a like this one, a tail of I think the original Gartside buck gurgler had bucktail and a little bit of crystal flash. I like to use a little bit of rabbit because that moves while it's just sitting there. It'll just kind of move around in the water. You can use calf tail, just about anything. Colors are endless. On one of Al's presentations, a guy did a fly called the Llano bug, Llano, and it used elk hair for a wing with a foam body like that. That one I didn't put legs on. But with a gurgler, they can be used for freshwater or saltwater. So the sizes could be 6 or 8 for bluegill. Maybe 6s and 4s for bass. When you get into saltwater, they could be bigger. I think for the gurgler, I'm going to use chartreuse foam. So this was actually hackle. 2 millimeter foam. You can find it in most fly shops. You can even find it in craft shops. But the stuff in craft shops is maybe a little different density, or a little bit different tightness of the air bubbles in it. But in order to determine the width of the foam, like I said before, the best way to do it is the gap of the hook. And so you can just kind of make a mark. Like that. And then use the scissors to cut the foam at that width. You want to go at least 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. So I'm going to start with this is more yellow chartreuse than green, but and again, this is a pretty thick thread. This is 400 denier, so I got to be careful with bulk. But it's the only chartreuse I have. So one of the things I like to use for a tail on these gurglers, I think red is a special color. And so I've got a little piece of hackle, red metal hackle. And I'm off, and I'm just going to tie. Again, it doesn't hurt if it kind of goes down the bend a little bit like that. And then I'll come up to about the middle. I'm using the same basically the same hook as I did for the Predator. By gap on it, I bent that one a little bit. I think that's a nymph hook. But I like how it sits in the water with a little bit heavier hook. The only problem is if you get it hooked on a log, you're probably going to break it off instead of straightening the hook and being able to get it back. But there's the tail. And then I'll take the strip of foam and put a little bit of a taper in it. And then leaning towards me, I'll start wrapping that on. Maybe one more turn there. So that should be good. For, well, might go a little bit further back. All right. Then for the body, I'll use some ice dub. And this is a olive brown ice dub. I've started quite a ways back here. Let me. Back there. Sorry for bumping the camera there. I want to go quite a ways forward here. We don't have the eye to put on this one. Now for the legs, I haven't shown it yet, but I just got some rubber leg material here. Don't know where I got it, but it's orange with some little black flecks in it. I kind of like that for some of these legs. So I'm going to do similar. I'm going to go back here into the dubbing a little bit. Do a couple wraps, and if you pull this, you can get it down to the side where you want it to be. About right there. And I'll cut it plenty long. I've got enough for the other side. So that's plenty. Just to clean that up, I'll use a little bit more ice dub. Now, for the gurgler, you want to go back a little bit, like maybe a head's length back, an eyes length back from the eye. And then cut it off right about there. And then take that piece that's left over and put another bit in there. Wet finish. And then just cut this off. Like that. Now the legs are gonna foul in the hook band unless you cut them a little bit shorter than what they are. But those will make a little commotion on the water, and then that in the front there will too. A lot of times I'll take a little bit of super glue, just a little. And squeeze it in that gap. Hold it up, and then that's an outstanding gurgler there.
Looks very nice.
Yeah, those are two nice bugs.
Yep, I've got a little bit of extra glue there, it looks like.
I haven't tied too many foam bugs. I should start doing that.
I really, for the bluegill spawn, a lot of times I would use anything that floated, like a elk hair caddis, any of the flies I had that floated real well. But you can't beat the flotation of these foam bugs, and bluegill and bass just love them. You could use these even for a like a hopper dropper kind of thing, and use them for trout as well.
Nice.
So we got a few minutes left, if you don't mind. That's another one of my favorite bluegill patterns. And
Yeah,
it's
look.
real simple.
Yeah, that looks really good.
It's real simple. This one will last forever too, because it has UV resin in the middle.
UV resin go bad?
It depends on, like, what do you mean by bad? Like start to get thick?
I'll show you. I don't know if you can see this, but it's not old either. Only a couple months old.
Hang on, let me spotlight you real quick. If I can. There you are. So is it getting thick then? Clumpy?
Yeah, chunky.
Um,
Chunky.
when
It's a good brand.
what brand is it by?
Solarez, it's a good
Solarez?
stuff.
Yeah, that is good stuff.
Yeah.
The only stuff I've used for a couple of years is the loon stuff, and I haven't used the brush. I just use the little dropper part so I can put it where I need it. And maybe using the brush exposes it to air and light more. I don't know if that's the much of a case, but I got some of this stuff from Al Beatty, and it's actually 3D printer resin.
Huh.
And this stuff with the loon light that came with the kit, the UV light that came with the loon kit, this stuff hardens just so good. And there's no usually once you've cured it, there's a little bit of almost seems like a greasy residue left behind. I haven't noticed that at all with this stuff yet.
Hmm.
So for
Still
those
seems to
spiders,
work.
go ahead.
It still seems to work, but it might not be quite as clear. When I first got it, it was real clear.
Huh. How old is it?
Couple months.
Oh, a couple months.
Yeah, it should last a year.
Yeah, I've been
it's-
using this. I bought a new tube thinking I'd run out of it. But I've been using this for almost 2 years.
Yeah, that's why I
And
got this, because
it's still thin. I wonder if you ever have it exposed to light at all.
I don't think so. I keep them pretty much closed up in a way.
Like
Yeah.
fluorescent, if you have fluorescent lights in your house, sometimes that'll mess with it a little bit.
I got LEDs.
Well, I don't think that's a problem then.
You know, it's the thin stuff, because the thicker stuff, when the flies I tie, it seems like it was just too thick.
For these bluegill spiders, I got these bodies from a couple of different places. I think the black ones were actually from Bass Pro Shops, from the White River Fly Shop section. These white ones I think I got online. I think you can get them. Jay Stockard has them for $225. For the size 10s have 24 in the package. The size 8s have 18 in the package. So that's quite a few for the price. They're at Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops sometimes. Last time I was in Cabela's, I think all I saw was like popper bodies, like the foam, like those in the middle, like popper bodies or whatever. But I used to be able to get yellow ones, and that's one thing I haven't seen in a long time. I really like the yellow for yellow with black legs or yellow with white legs. But these black ones are probably my favorite. So what I'll do a lot of times with X-Acto knife or sometimes with the scissors, I'll just take and just run a groove down the middle of it. If you can see that.
Yeah.
Then I'll lay down some, this is a 140 denier thread. Probably about the thinnest I would use to try to compress foam, because it can be a nightmare sometimes when you break thread and you're halfway through it. So the thread base is more to kind of give the glue something to hold on to. This has actually lasted me longer than any super glue so far. It's a Gorilla super glue. It has like a nozzle too, but I've been using the brush. It's kind of a gel, so it's not real messy, but just put it on there till it gets shiny. And then you got to know what you got to be determined here. Just kind of get it separated and decide what you're going to do with it. And then place it on there and just kind of give it a squeeze. And that body will kind of hold together with the glue onto the thread there. That's pretty solid. Now I went right almost up to the to the hook eye there. And then just grab it and squeeze down around it like that. And then give it a couple loose wraps like that. If you just start pushing on it, then you're going to twist it around. But if you give it a couple of loose wraps and then pull, that kind of gives you a better set on that body. And just kind of work toward the edges a little bit to try to get a little bit of a gap in there like that. That way the foam won't tear. So at this point, I'm going to use some legs. I think I'll use these. I got some silly legs. I don't know how if they'll be too small on this or not. I've never used them before. I'll give them a shot. But just kind of do the same thing and give it just maybe a few kind of medium tension wraps. I think I want that leg to be a little bit longer. Pull down. Get it to where you want them. Some of these types of rubber legs, though, the more tension you put on them, the more they want to pull together. And I think that's going to be a problem with this stuff, but we'll see. And on the other side, do the same thing. I think that'll be good. Wow, that stuff really wants to pull together. I don't know what that'll do in the water, whether that'll be a problem or not, but I'll give it a good. And then I like to give it a half hitch here.
What if you put a little bit of dubbing there? Would kind of spread it out.
I wonder if that would. Let me use even some black superfine. Probably going to need more than that, but that seemed to help a little bit. Let me give it a quick half hitch there, and then bring it under. Bring it under. And in the front there, you want to actually grab a little bit of that foam like that. That'll help hold that front down real good. Another thing with that dubbing is fish's teeth aren't going to cut the thread. If it was exposed thread right there,
Yeah.
You'd have fish's teeth cutting that thread, but a little bit of dubbing can really save that. Let me use some of that special UV 3D stuff. And I got around there pretty good. Make sure it's not in the eye. And then I'll zap it. Those legs again, those are going to foul around the hook point, but I think if you cut them back to about like that, that'll be a killer.
Yeah, that looks really good.
So that's 3 bluegill killers right there.
For sure.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Any questions on any of those?
No, those nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Let me see here. That's all I got.
Good job, Mike.
Yeah, very nice.
I hope to get out this Friday.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah,
my
this
first
weekend.
time.
This weekend, I think we're running out of time. It stayed cold for a long time, but then it got real hot and the water temperature just rose really fast. So it went from crappie spawn to bluegill spawn just like that. And so hopefully it's not a short spawn.